Follow these instructions to ensure proper use of the TA525.
Hello and welcome to the Owen Deery interview cast. We can talk in a real slow NPR voice, real dulcet tones. I'm your host, Cal G, and to my left is a coordinator extraordinaire.
I can.
And across from me,
let's break the tone,
is Ottawa's indie sensation, Owen Deery.
Yeah.
Hello.
There we go.
So we're going to be interviewing Owen in this segment. Owen, who are you?
Yeah, introduce yourself.
Introduce yourself.
Tell us about what you do as your job, and obviously the game that you released recently.
Right. So I make games on my own in Ottawa by myself. I run. I don't like to call it a studio because it's basically just me sitting at the computer in my apartment.
But do you still use the company name for what you do?
Yeah. When you make games for consoles, you have to become a corporation. So
did you have to incorporate?
Unfortunately, I am a CEO.
Did you incorporate? Oh my God, tax-wise, that's
it's the worst.
It's the worst thing you could ever do as an independent. You have to?
I had to, yeah, because basically, like, if I'm working with, Adult Swim or Sony, like, they don't want to work with some dude. They need to work with a corporation.
Shit. I didn't know that. Oh my God.
Yeah, like, I had to go to the bank and set up business accounts and everything.
Yeah, I know.
And I was talking to, the small business consultant who was helping me set everything up. He's like, why are you incorporating? Yeah. I'm like, because I have to. He's like, you should bill them for these expenses because it's dumb for you to become a corporation. But unfortunately, I am.
You have to because then you have to pay double taxes on the fact that you have to pay yourself a salary, so you pay the tax on your company and on your salary. Yeah. It's awful.
So I run an incorporated studio.
Wow, God. Yeah.
And what was the game you released?
I released Small Radios, Big Televisions on Steam and PlayStation in November.
Yeah.
Very cool.
What kind of game is it? Just
sort of an exploration adventure game.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really chill.
It is really chill.
It is really chill.
Yeah.
There's no score. You can't die. Just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, puzzle components to it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what were the challenges of being a one-person studio? You kind of answered that with that. But what else?
That was the easy part.
Wearing all the hats has got to be.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's fun because you get to hop around a lot. Like, if I had spent 2.5 years doing nothing but programming, I probably wouldn't have finished the game. But the fact is I can, spend 4 or 5 days programming stuff nonstop, and then I can take a break. Like, okay, I'll just work on music for 2 days. And that's a good way to sort of chill out and unwind.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you get to do all the stuff, just jump around, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You composed the entire soundtrack yourself.
Yep.
So you're also a musician.
Yes.
Well, you are, actually, yeah. Do you have a band that you...
Yes, I had a band. We just played our last show, actually.
Oh.
Oh, shit!
Everyone is moving away. So.
Oh, no. The goodbye tour.
Yes.
Yeah. I never actually went... Did I ever go and see you play? I should have gone and seen you play.
Mike asking the hard questions. Am I a good friend?
I think I've seen you play. That's why I'm curious. Because if I knew that I had never seen you play, I just don't think I ever came up and said hi. I probably slinked out slowly, like Homer fading into the bush.
Yeah, that's my style too.
Yeah. I kind of remember that. Actually, as a kind of a background, this fun part is Owen Deery is a friend of mine from school. Him and I both took the same, not same year, it's the same 3 years of the program at Algonquin game development course at Algonquin College. We both graduated, luckily. I only graduated because of him, which I admit openly, because I was an artist forcing myself through a coding course, and I had such a hard time once we got into graphics programming that I couldn't get my head around it no matter what I did, so I basically just kept running into every TA moment he had available and just being like, save me!
Only now have I sort of kind of figured out graphics programming.
Yeah.
Only now I'm like, oh, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't really feel like it was a very much of a deep end thing, and that's kind of one of my questions actually, is for you, I would almost say you're more of a graphics programmer, like that's your forte?
Yeah, programming is like my thing.
Yeah. And you like to do the graphics programming?
Yeah, I think it's fun, because you can, it's a good way to make art.
Yeah.
I don't like programming like boring stuff. I like making games.
Yeah.
And I like making art, and graphics are a fun part of games.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, if anyone has Twitter, who you should all probably have Twitter, is follow Owen on Twitter at Owen Deery.
At Owen Deery.
Yeah. Owen Deery. Sorry, the jury thing comes from the school days when someone used to
I'm
call
sure
you
it'll be
lawyer.
written on the website.
Yeah, it will be up, and we'll put it in the notes. But follow him; he does amazing work with shaders, and he posts up lots of really great gifs of the work that he does. But that's kind of an interesting thing about you and your work in general is you always, and from back in the day in the school until now, you've always had a kind of like a visual, almost artistic sense of being a developer. I know lots of developers out there currently that are all about logic problems and solving like, AI and things like that, right? But you were always, no matter what part of the team you were on, you were the guy who made the visuals happen, right? Like everyone else was like, I want this to move, and they would figure out how to make it move logically, but nothing happened on screen.
Yeah.
You were the visual guy. Did you always kind of tie yourself into wanting to be like, in your programming world, you were like, I want to focus in on...
Yeah, it was never like something that I intended to focus on.
Oh, okay.
Like even when I joined school, I had never programmed before, and I had I think I like looked at programming and I was like, oh, I don't get this. So I went into school. I just gave up immediately. So when I went into school, I figured I was going to be like a level designer or a 3D modeler or something.
Really?
Yeah, because I didn't know how to program, and I figured it's like, it's not for me. I'll just.
I never got that sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I sort of went into school, it sort of clicked, and I was like, oh, okay, programmer, perfect. But so even before that, like when I was in high school, I was basically just making levels in Unreal Tournament, and so that's all just like building spaces, doing textures, working on particle effects. And then when I got into programming, it's like, oh, now I can build those myself. Yeah. And so that's, I guess, how that came together.
Very cool. Very cool.
I saw that you were posting as you were developing in TIG forums.
Yes.
Yes, as you were going, and it was like I was looking at the thread, and it was like from 2013 or 2014 up until now.
Summer 2014.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2014, and I was like, holy fuck! I was like, so how was it, getting feedback as you were developing? How much of your original vision did you keep for small radio, big television, and how much was malleable as you went? Was there,
Yeah, no, to be honest, there wasn't a lot of like huge feedback on the game because it's sort of, I don't know, I think as I was developing it, a lot of people didn't really understand what it was at all. Most of the feedback I got was, that looks cool, I have no idea what it is. And I'd just be like, yeah, I don't really know what it is yet either. Like, until it shipped, I was like, okay, that's what it's going to be.
So that's interesting. So you didn't know what it was, like, how long did you not know what it was going to be,
Well, I mean, I don't mean in the purest sense, but...
yeah, I don't think you're a child doing a macaroni fucking art, like, gluing these pieces.
No, but it's when I did the first demo, it started out as a summer demo. I had some free time between projects, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to take 2 months and work on a weird game that I want to make, because up to that point I was just making sort of web games that you play on portals. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make a weird game for the web, and I'm going to put it out there and see if people like it. And from there, I just sort of started building on top of it, and I tried to plan as best I could, but when you're working by yourself, you really have the ability to go in any direction you want. Like, you never have to sit down with your whole team and plan out a year's schedule ahead or budget, or
you don't have to make the skeleton and then add the muscles and all that shit.
Exactly.
You can build as you're going.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I could say it was organic, but at the same time, it's just 'cause I didn't plan anything.
It still came together well. I saw that you were doing that, and like even us as like visual artists, like we'll post work in progresses sometimes, and the feedback on those sometimes is like middling to high, or I mean, no one's saying like you're garbage, but like at the same time, you'll get no comments on it or something, or no likes, or they're very few.
You just know that it's not quite going the direction you want.
Well,
I just wanted to hit on was, so for you with the development side of things, when you're like doing it solo and personal, because you have worked in studios before, so you've had the experience on both sides. And like, I guess this whole like you directing and controlling yourself is obviously a positive, right? But in the development process, I mean, obviously since all the work's on you, that's a negative and that's a hard load. But is there something else that someone wouldn't realize when trying to develop on their own that you would be like, watch out, like this is actually a downside to it that you should be prepared for?
I don't know. So one of the big things was, like I said, I was making web games before this. And with those, I would just make them really fast. Like, usually the game development span would be anywhere from like 1 week to a month. Yeah. And that's like at the longest. And so usually what I do is I'd work like nonstop on a game until it was done, and then I'd take a break for a couple days or a week or something, and then go back and do another one. Yeah. And I didn't really think to adjust my habits for this game. And so basically for 2.5 years I worked nonstop.
It's still very impressive. There's other game out there like Elysium was the one that the developer made,
Right.
like where he did the whole thing, the art
Yeah.
and the programming and stuff. It took him like 7 years or something like
Yeah,
that to build.
Is that
The fact that you did
is that the one with the like
the fox
furry
dude.
character?
Yeah.
And he's like, so yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that was really impressive.
Yeah, it was very good. But for you, I was not expecting you to do this in 2 years. Like when you were like, "It's coming out soon," I'm like, "What?" Again, math magics and you, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, "How is he doing this?"
Well, at that point, it's sort of I'm a very risk averse person, which is bizarre because I'm an
Self-employed.
independent developer.
You're
self-employed.
Yeah, no, and that's like the
Riskiest.
riskiest thing you can do with your life.
Yeah.
So I sort of balance that out by kind of hedging my bets to a certain extent because games, even if every game you've made has been a success so far, your next game might be a complete failure.
Yeah.
And I see these people working on games for 4 or 5 years, and I'm like, but your game comes out, no matter how popular it is, it might fail entirely.
Yeah.
And then that's like 5 or 6 years,
Yeah.
right? And so I basically didn't want to do that.
Because that sounds like a good choice.
So I was like, okay, I think I can make the game I want in this time span, and I've got support from my publisher, so let's try and do it in this time. I would have given myself more time if I were to do it again, though.
Oh, really?
Well, I've never worked on a project for this long, and I've also never done like planning for a project this long.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of holes I fell into in terms of figuring out how long milestones are going to take and giving myself buffer areas and planning for like packs and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I should have put that on my questions. You went to PAX with it, right?
Yeah, last August 2015.
That's super cool. We want to kind of take ourselves there at some point. I was just curious about your own experience of being a developer there. Like, what was?
PAX was insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's an insane environment. I know that much, but I was just kind of curious to see the person from behind the booth kind of working out.
Yeah,
Right?
so luckily, again, I went there with Adult Swim Games, who were the publisher on the title, and so they set up all the booth, they had all the TVs, they did all the signage, they had all the controllers, they had everything worked out. So I basically had to like fly there and show up, and then just hang out in the booth,
Cool.
which was amazing because at the same PAX, the guys who made Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes were there exhibiting at the indie booth, and they were doing everything themselves.
Oh.
And so they had to like, you essentially, if you're setting up a booth at PAX, the costs basically work out that it's cheapest to go and buy a television when you land, instead of renting one. So they had to like go out and buy a television and set that up and make sure their booth was completely working, and then man it all day for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And
Was it all the guys from here?
The guys from
They're all
Ottawa,
from Ottawa? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yes, and so at the same time as I was just like wandering around, not having a ton of stress on me, I was like they were the only people I really knew there, so I would go and visit them, and they were just swamped and they were just exhausted. So it was really impressive to see them do it all themselves, while I had to do basically nothing.
Did you help?
What's that?
Did you help?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I had to stand there and show my game to people and talk to them about it.
Because I could just kind of picture you like back in game class, like with like a coffee, you're just kind of in a chair and just sipping while everything goes on.
It was like, yeah. I mean, in terms of labor, I didn't have to do anything, but I'm not a super social person.
No.
Like, I don't really like to go out and mingle with people.
Whereas
so.
I spent my entire years alone, and I have a husband. Like,
I would have preferred to spend it alone.
Yeah, see what I preferred.
I always remember Indie Game the movie. I'm sure you guys have both seen that.
Yeah.
I always remember Phil Fish going to that, and he was like completely depressed after it and stuff. It always just looked like a nightmare to me. So I wondered. Yeah, I was like,
did you get diseased like everyone does?
No, because
No.
I think they sort of smartened up a little bit, and so there's hand sanitizer everywhere.
everywhere.
That's nice.
But yeah, like 3 days of. First of all, being away from home, which I don't like doing. Seattle's a cool place, but I love being at home with my family
not cool enough.
and my dog.
Yeah.
And so it's being away from home all weekend and then just mingling with people, most of whom are like hardcore gamers.
Yeah.
Which I'm not. I'm a game developer, but I'm not a super gamer.
No, you've never been hardcore.
Which is an interesting combination too.
Yeah.
Well,
although if you're developing a lot of time, you don't have time to play games. You know?
Well, it's the same thing for us, though, right? Like, I mean, for gaming on our side with concept art, you're removed in a level before you ever get into the dev cycle.
Yeah.
It's all conceptual ideas and working through just like creative space, and we don't get into that like that dev cycle. It's very, very deep and very hard. So it distances us from the games because I know a lot of people who are in the cycle who don't actually play a lot because making them becomes more of a passion than playing them. It's very, very common.
What I like to think about it is, like, I see a lot of people sort of my age, mid-late 20s, and they sort of grow out of gaming, which is understandable, right? And I think that's sort of what happened to me. Like, I was pretty into games when I was, like, a teenager and in my early 20s, and then I just sort of, like, they don't attract me as much anymore. There's other stuff I prefer to do, but I still love making games. So I have this weird tenuous hold on the gaming industry. And I'm sort of at arm's length, but I'm still connected to it, and it's a really bizarre thing.
Well, it's a relation to animation is exactly that. Like when I was in animation, and the animation people, they can't watch animation films half the time. They're just like, oh, I see you're making the mistake here, and they just kind of block out bothering to go to a film at all. But they love animation. It's everything to them, right? So like sitting down and watching anything that's not of an extremely amazing caliber, right? Like even for yourself today, if something came out that was just like so your jam and so your game, you probably might pop it on really quickly. But other than that, you really don't sit and play anymore, right? It's the same thing for an animation guy. Like really at the end of the day, they go to Pixar films and like, you know, like that's it. Like anything else is just horrendous and they'll never turn it on. I remember talking to animators all the time being like, have you watched anime? And they're like, I would never turn that shit on ever. And it's just like, because it doesn't move enough and it doesn't follow the rules. And, you know, it's just kind of the same relation. Like
the eyes are too big for the skull. It doesn't make any fun. Okay, all right. No, that's actually really interesting. What was the last game that you got super into out of curiosity? Was there anything
last one I got super into was probably Arkham Knight.
Yeah? Okay, that's cool.
And then, because basically since last year when I played that, I've just been like crunching on this game.
For sure. Did you guys try Firewatch out of curiosity? It's a short game.
I tried it very briefly on Steam, and I haven't been able to get back to it yet.
To get back to your game and the publisher side of the thing, I was interested in how did you get a publisher? Like, how did you convince a publisher to? I mean, like, you're one guy alone, and I mean, your stuff's cool, but
it's also
still like.
But it's also a very esoteric game. It's like you said, it's like super chill. It's not like the norm. It's very like small indie title.
And you got a very credible company, like a very
Adult Swim. Adult Swim like has especially over the last couple of years, have been known for putting out good games, and everyone's like, what the fuck? Like Adult Swim's putting out good. Like they were caught off guard by it almost. You know, like they do TV. Why do they do? You know.
Yeah. So I guess first question is, how did you get them to agree?
Okay, so
how did you convince someone to fucking
people ask that a lot, and I wish I had a better answer, but
if it's a simple answer,
they came to me.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Awesome.
So you were talking about my Take Source devlog before?
Yeah.
Their Game Scout guy, Steve G, he just goes out and looks for games on the internet, and he goes on TIG forums, and there's a bunch of other games there that they're publishing, so you can tell that they kind of
go cherry pick from there.
Yeah, and so he saw my game on there, and he sent me a message saying like, "Hey, do you want to be published by us?"
Well, that's amazing.
And that's basically it.
Best case scenario, right?
So how does the publishing side work? Because there's always a comparison between people being like, "Oh, indie's better and publishing is bad," or vice versa.
Yeah.
So how does the publishing thing work? Like they come and they do what? Do they take it as their property?
Well, I mean, it depends what sort of publisher you're going with and what sort of deal you work out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who are sort of like boo publishers are thinking about like AAA publishers,
probably,
who I think have a lot of impact on the games that their developers make. But Adult Swim, I want to say, are the best. They were awesome to work with.
They're great.
They were nothing but amazing. But basically they provide services like QA. They do like marketing and PR. They made a television commercial which aired on television.
Oh shit!
Which is something that most games don't get.
Yeah.
So because they're able to just like, we'll just put it on the television network that we own.
Real simple.
Yeah. No, and like PAX, like I couldn't have done any of that by myself.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just one guy, and
Wow.
That's
really
fucking
cool.
dope, man. That's
and
super cool.
and also Steam. I didn't have to go with the Greenlight.
Oh yeah,
Greenlight looks like a fucking nightmare.
It is a nightmare. It's the worst thing ever. I've done so much like concept work for Contract for Greenlight stuff, and then like it never makes it to the related day because of that. Yeah, it's not fun.
Greenlight. Yeah, I'm very not well versed in the Steam universe, but I take one look at that. I'm like, oh fuck, like.
So if for working with a publisher, like, is it that because like the whole idea for a lot of indie developers is they start out and then they're trying to figure out how they're going to make their income off their first game, right? Yeah. And usually it's they release something and it's either like an asset on the asset store for Unity or it's a small Steam game or something like that. Yeah. And that turns out a little bit of revenue while they work on their larger title, right? But you were only on your game for these 2 years, right? So the publisher thing, that helps stabilize your like income and your lifestyle while you work on it? Yeah,
definitely.
Oh, that's awesome. It's I always personally, I've always thought the publishing side of things was a better option. Like, I get the indie and the self-empowerment and your own business and stuff like that, right?
If you can pull it off, awesome.
Yeah.
Like the Keep Talking guys.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't have a publisher. They just worked their asses off and went to every single event for like 2 or 3 years while they made the game, and it was a massive success. Yeah. Because they made an awesome game. Yeah. But there's probably 1,000 teams out there working on games that will make no money, unfortunately.
No, exactly. So. It's like when the boom of the mobile market happened, right? And everyone's like, I'm making a mobile studio, and they're like, why is your game going to be more exciting and interesting than the 2 million versions out there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But if you go with a publisher and they have some sort of support, there's this level of advertising and reach and then accessibility to things that you'd never reached before. Yeah, because
like we were talking about, there's so many indie games. Yeah. Like if you were to just make an indie game and put it out there and try and contact the press, unless your game was like mind-blowing, no one is going to write about you, unfortunately. And so with Adult Swim, we were able to work with them and this other PR agency, Evolve, who are in Victoria, BC. They worked together and they were able to get a bunch of coverage for the game, like on a bunch of major sites, stuff that I would never be able to do on my own, you know?
Yeah. That's very cool.
I wanted to ask about the art style of Small Radios, Big Televisions. You made a very visually cohesive game, you know? It's very, it's simple, but it's very, like, it's eye-catching, you know? People see it, and I've seen a lot of people talk about the visuals instantly, you know? Like, this game looks, like, cool. How did you come about that? You're a big shaders guy, like, were you just experimenting and you're like, that's it?
Basically. Yeah, I think the main sort of thing that makes it look a bit more interesting is I worked a lot on post-processing shaders. So I render the game regularly, and then I render all these other layers on top of it. So there's like depth of field when you're like turning the rooms around, and there's chromatic aberrations, so the colors are a bit blurred on the edges, and just stuff like that. I really enjoyed working with it.
It's super stylish looking, and like I think even to people who aren't into puzzlers or chill games like that, they still see it and they're like instantly intrigued by it. I saw like a ton of comments about that kind of thing.
I think the difference that I saw with me is that like I remember your style for all the things that you would work on, and I was like, this is definitely Owen's kind of jam. Okay. It was like, because like you always had a bit of a retro kind of appreciation for a lot of the stuff that you produced in school. So I saw that. But the part about it that I always I found really interesting was that like I never got a sense of you having a craving for making like or even not an understanding. It sounds rude, but like you didn't put your head around art at any point in any kind of fashion. Right. But this feels very designed, like it's very intentionally designed, which is really interesting as a developer because very few developers ever do that, right? What kind of like pushed you into being like, I'm going to make this retro like tape cassette thing, and like where did that inspiration come from?
Well, I mean, I've always sort of been interested in art and design, but I have no training basically. Most of my 3D modeling and texturing stuff was just making Unreal levels when I was a teenager.
Which is good. That's a good start.
Yeah, exactly. So the only reason I know how to 3D model is because I basically started when I was 12. I just started like cramming stuff together, making terrible stuff, and now I can passively do some.
You're like 13-year-olds, you're too late. don't start.
You're past your prime.
But I think the thing that sort of brought me up to a level where I felt I could do like commercially viable, like a level of art that I could put in a product and be like, here, buy this, not just a student project or something, was for the 3.5 years leading up to starting on this game. Like I said, I was making web games, and I would do all the art for those as well. So I basically...
Didn't you work with Gabe on a few of those?
I worked with him on a couple projects. Nothing really came out. I think we did Bytown Lumberjack.
That's the one.
That's what I saw that on your website. I was like, that looks sick.
Yeah, that was a super cool game. That was super early on when I was like, maybe I can make money on Netflix.
So you did all the rest yourself after that?
Yeah. So after that, I pretty much just did Flash games and then HTML5 games. And
it's so funny. I thought after that it was like Gabe doing all the artwork and you doing the programming, but that was all yours. I'm way more impressed with you now.
Well, that's sort of how I was able to have the confidence to do all the art and everything for this game, because basically after the first year I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do everything myself, because it's tough enough being an indie developer without having to like coordinate with different parts of the team and schedule everything. So it's like, if I do it all myself, then I can just work on my own schedule. Yeah. And you can make crappy Flash games and still sell them.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
I mean, not anymore.
No,
you used to be able to make them. So like the first few games,
Newgrounds,
they didn't look great, but I could still sell them, right?
Yeah.
And so basically it was three and a half years of me banging my head against Photoshop, and now I can kind of do art.
Yeah.
That's cool.
No, that's the thing. I always put that out to my students, and I always put that out to everyone out there as well. Everyone's always like, how do you get going? And I'm just like, just do a lot of it until you get good.
That's basically what I've been doing as an indie developer, just make stuff nonstop.
Yeah.
If you made something really shitty, release it anyway.
Yeah. And it's the same thing for artists out there, and all of our artist listeners. I know there's a bunch of you. Is like, everyone's always like, what do I put up? Stop bothering with perfection.
Yeah.
Stop bothering chasing perfection. Like, it's supposed to look like this AAA developer level stuff, and that was what makes me cool. I know everyone follows those people, and all you see is this amazing crap that they're turning out, but it's because they've been doing it for 33 years, right? Right now, release out everything you've got. I just put up a stupid sketch I did when I was bored during a staff meeting.
Yeah.
You know, it's not good, but one of the characters is actually cool, and everyone's like, hey, look at that guy. Now I'm going to redraw that character, and he's going to be, like, fun. And
it's a napkin doodle. It's Mike. He's, like, pointing at him. He's like, I'm a cowboy. Back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
No, it's like the quote about you have 10,000 shitty drawings in you before you get a good one.
Yeah.
You got to go through those shitty drawings.
Oh, yeah.
You got to make those shitty games.
Yeah. And for you, for programming, too, I mean, if you're going to put that to the devs out there who are listening, is, you know, like, for you, whenever you make code or you make something, like you're releasing those shaders you do and those GIFs and stuff, I'm sure you break and make horrible things, like, all the time.
Yeah. Because the great thing about, like, making those weird art GIFs that I put on Twitter is no one sees the code.
No.
No one even interacts with it, right?
Yeah.
It can be terrible code.
As long as it looks pretty.
As long as it looks pretty for, like, a 3-second loop, awesome.
Is there an equivalent? Because when you're painting something in Photoshop or drawing something, there's a large majority of the time where you're like, this looks like shit. And you just keep going, and like eventually you render it to a point where you're like, oh, it looks good. Or, you know, it finally turned out when you did the inks or something. Is there the equivalent to that in development where it's just like small radio big television was like collapsing in on itself and it was like a mess of clipping and polygons? Or
yeah, like most of the development process for like any video game, they look terrible.
My favorite story I heard was what was that fucking game? It was on DS. It was the one where you could write anything in there.
Oh, Scribblenauts?
Scribblenauts, yes. They said like, yeah, for like 90% of development nothing worked, and then all of a sudden everything did. And you're like, what the fuck? How did you think you were making a game for 90% of it then?
Well, it's because you sort of work on individual chunks, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you spend a month working on like navigation or something, but the rooms look awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was thinking like with their game, it was just like, you know, they type Godzilla and it doesn't work, and they're like, okay, well, put in more Godzillas. You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the visual implementation in a game happens like so late in it. In the beginning, like when the dev's working on it, it'll just be like, here's a tube, and then like let's make them walk back and forth for like a week to get that entire thing working, right? And it'll just be blank squares with nothing on it, and it looks like shit. But it's like in the last like few months when finally all the assets start getting dumped on top, that's when it starts happening. And then even then, that still all looks like shit until you get into the fancy post-processing stuff where you're getting the fancy lights in and all of the fancy texture rendering, and then like...
Well, it's like the painting. Like, the reason why it looks shitty for a lot of it leading up to it is because you don't want to put too much detail on it and then be like, fuck, no, I gotta redo this, right? Mm-hmm. So same with games. You don't want to, like, make this beautiful detailed level and then be like, oh, the navigation here is terrible. We gotta redo everything, and then you've wasted all that time. So.
And it makes it harder. So, like, for us, when we're painting, we have, like, 1,000 layers going of all that rendering, but you need to go back under 6 layers of rendering to fix something underneath all of it. When you're working on a game, you don't want to have all of that shit running while you're like testing whether or not the walk cycle can work, and then you're just like, and you're like, this hasn't been optimized yet.
Yeah, I'm working on VR stuff right now, and it's super tough because when you're working on regular 2D games on a screen, like they're 3D games, but they're on a screen. And if you're running in debug mode, usually it runs much slower. Yeah. So if you're running at like 10 FPS on a screen, you're like, this doesn't look great, but at least I can test stuff out. Mm-hmm. And if you're running 10 FPS on a VR headset, you just want to puke your guts out.
Yeah. Oh my god, I remember that.
So it's like you have to make sure that your code is running like top performance at all times. Which
you do the like. I always, when I was working on with the Oculus, was when it was on like dev mode and slow, I'd have it on the table and like look down at it while I would test stuff. Or if I had to, I'd just stick it on real quick and then take it off.
Yeah, I do that. The tough thing is that since I'm using a Vive set, it's like room scale.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't fit in my office. It fits in like the dining room beside my office. Yeah. So I code something and then run it and then run to the other room and check it out and then put it down and then run back to my desk and try something else.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask actually, do you have any plans for small radios, big televisions to be in VR? Because that was the second thing I saw the most was people saying, is this in VR? Why isn't this in VR? The Giant Bomb guys, I went to their site, I saw them talking about, this should be in VR. Yeah. So, like, you know, even them, they're demanding it. Are there any plans, or are you...
Maybe. I can't really say anything solid right now. PlayStation VR is very cool. I've tried that out. It would work really well there, but I can't really say right now.
That's totally fine.
Like, it's like, being a small team, you can be really agile and move around a lot, but at the same time, you can't say these are my plans for the future.
No.
Like, to be honest, I don't know what the next year is going to be.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
Do you have to, for the game itself, as part of the publishing with Adult Swim, the game doesn't like belong to them. You're free to take it where you want to at this point.
With the agreement that I have, the game is like my IP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like, if you wanted to like evolve it more, like even add patches or.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, adding patches. That's just like development stuff.
That's okay. That's fine. Like you don't have to get approval and like. Okay. Cool. That's nice.
Do you think VR is the future?
No.
No.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's neat.
It's 3D TV.
It's better than 3D TV.
No, but I mean, like, in the way that there's a hype, right? Like, all the TVs came out, and like, we all have 3D, and you're just like, yeah. You know, like,
No,
I don't really...
VR is super cool. It's mostly enthusiast right now, because it's cool, but it's not great.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard for the general public to just try. You know
exactly. So
like, my mom and dad have no idea what the fuck. They think I'm talking about jacking into a Matrix. VR now.
Yeah,
they have no idea.
That's what it's like. But, I mean, this is what we're seeing now is just, like, first-generation stuff. These giant boxes we're strapping to our heads, right? Once it's sunglasses, it's going to be massive.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's going to take like an iPhone to come along, because like the mobile device world and cell phones, right? There were people debating between, even when we had like the last major cell phone was the Razr, the flip phones.
Oh yeah.
You know, and like everyone's like, oh, that's the latest cell phone. But even then, most people didn't have cell phones. Then the iPhone came out, and everyone's just like, and now we're locked.
I think even if you like had the very first iPhone in your hand right now, it would probably look like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't say for sure, but I have a feeling if we looked at a device from 9 years ago right now, it'd be like, this is gross.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we would.
This is heavy, and it's got weird design, and
well, it's a question is that early adoption thing, right? Because with VR right now, because it will be a thing. It is essentially in whatever form it takes. It's the next step for like our screens, basically.
Yeah.
Because at the end, they can only get bigger and more resolution, and eventually our eyes only have so much resolution. So once you go past like 6K, and it's like, well, our physical human bodies can't consume more information. So like VR is the next thing, is to incorporate ourselves into it. And I mean, there's so much to do. Get rid of the nausea thing. There's a lot to do with VR that we can complain about. But excuse me. Like, do you think it's just like a fad that's going to happen now, and it's going to cusp off, and it's going to disappear for a while, and then someone's going to come up with something? Or do you think that, like, as a dev, you should be planning titles to work around it? Because you did just do. Again, check out his Twitter feed, and also what other sources did you have?
I was doing devlog stuff on my Tumblr.
On Tumblr,
which you can find on my Twitter. It's all connected.
It's all connected to Twitter. So just follow on Twitter and get that stuff.
If you can use the internet, you can find me.
But like you went straight to a VR game next. Like, is it in your head that you should be continually trying to focus in on that because it's just hot now and not later?
Well, it's not really specifically a VR thing. It's I'm trying not to become stale in my skills, because especially if you're working at a studio, you will be exposed to new technologies and other people working on stuff, and so your skills will sort of update as you go. You still need to sort of work on them on your own, but you'll be exposed to this stuff. But when you're working by yourself, it's very easy to just be like, oh, I'll just work on this one technology that I know and never adapt. And if I had done that, then I'd still be making Flash games, and I'd be homeless. Because no one was going to buy any Flash games.
No.
So, like, at that point, so when Flash games stopped selling, I had to be like, okay, I'm going to learn HTML5. And so this is sort of a case of that, like, VR might be the next big thing. I can't say 100% either way, but it's like, if it is, I'd like to be able to have some knowledge of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's smart. You're future-proofing.
So we can't say, like, because I saw a lot of people commenting, like, going, like, oh, your next thing's going to be a VR game because you were working on that. Yeah. And it's not the plan. You were just doing it.
No, like I said, I don't know what the future holds right now.
Yeah.
The next year is a mystery?
Yeah, pretty much. What is the other thing I was going to ask? It's going to go back relating to your game. Is again, we're going back to like your inspiration for the game and getting into what kind of the theme that you had chose. How did you choose the theme for your game, and like what was the source for you getting up to that point?
So by theme, do you mean like story-wise, or like
like story, and then because the visuals about it and the story about the whole thing, right, is very much into that retro videotape thing, which everyone loved, and then like the PR package that got released with it with the box, was so cool.
So that's another thing that Adult Swim did.
Yeah, if I had that, I would have just signed up. Would have been like, oh yeah, you take the game, I just want the box. Like, that was super cool. Again, he put the picture up on his Twitter. You should check it out. But like that whole visual context, I think that was a huge selling point of the game. It was one of the first things that clicked into me where I started seeing, because I saw your cycle all the way up, but then once it started forming into that, and I saw that PR package, and I saw the videos, and I saw the like this videotape thing, and it started to make sense because so many people had no clue what you were doing for so long.
Yeah.
What made it into that?
I think the main thing that I tried to hold on to while making the game was I wanted to make a game that I would be interested in playing today.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm not a huge gamer anymore.
Yeah.
So when I do want to play a game, I want to sort of relax. Like I don't really want to play Left 4 Dead and be sweating bullets until 2 a.m. anymore. Like if I sit down, like I want to just chill out on my couch on my PlayStation and play a game, you know, with no lives where I can't die and I can just explore and I can go to cool places, I can pick things up and I can listen to music. That's all I want from a game these days.
Journey, Flower, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm playing Hokum on
Oh,
PlayStation right now, and that's a perfect example of just a really chilled out game that you can just go around. There's cool music, you can bump into stuff. That's all I need.
Yeah.
And and then that married with the concept of these tapes that have virtual worlds on them, and that's basically where it came from.
Nice. No, that's perfect. I love that. It's kind of funny because a lot of the games today, like I mean, almost like we were talking about before with movies, where it's just always kind of the same thing, right? And then we were talking about it last week with our pet peeves one. It was like, you know, the blue beam in the sky or whatever. Every game at the end of the day is always just like, you're gonna go save the world, and it's just like the motivation for the bad guys doesn't even make sense in today's world context anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that's why post-apocalyptic is like everything, because everything's destroyed, so we can make up anything we want, right?
Yeah.
Which is also getting tiresome. But to make a game just based on like the sensation you like out of gaming, right?
Yeah.
And this is a question we'll go around. Like, I mean, we already know yours. You like the calm gaming. Like for myself, I like engrossing games. I want something that sucks the world away for me,
Right.
and that usually happens with a strong story, right? But some sort of really encapsulating different gameplay mechanics. So, I mean, a lot of people didn't like Mirror's Edge 2. I really liked it a lot because I got a really sense of the height and the fear of the falling, and I was just so hooked into just not falling that I was playing around with like the edges of things and running and going fast and just like looking over and getting kind of frightened by that. And that was my latest hook, right? And that's every game I love. That's the one that happens to be the one I love the most, right? And what about for you, Cal? Like, what's the mechanic that you're like every time?
I like when games like judge me really harshly. Like Bayonetta is like perfect. It grades you on every
It's
combat
true. You do
thing.
like that.
So it's like I got like a D or something in that battle. I'm like, oh, I kicked my ass. I need to go back on hard mode and get an A. Like I just need to get that feeling. Or even something like Mega Man. You know, the classic Mega Man games, right? They're just like super kicking your ass, and I'm like, I gotta get through this without dying or without getting another thing. Like that is what I like punishment basically.
Yeah, so it's basically like the opposite of what I'm after these days.
Yeah.
And it's not to say I don't like things like that. Like I like Firewatch and stuff, but like I generally gravitate towards these games where I'm like, they're like, you're fucking terrible at this. Yeah. I'm like, I'll fucking prove you wrong.
It's true because you like fighting games a ton, right?
Yeah,
which is a game that
Street Fighter
is pretty much obsessively judging you no matter what you do in that
especially
game.
online.
Well,
You know, playing against those Japanese players, and I'm just like, I'm terrible. I've never been good.
You should never get into competitive gaming or anything else, like playing Overwatch and shit. I couldn't imagine you being in that.
That world.
You play those fighting games a lot, and it's kind of true. Like you play those because it requires you to just do it perfectly.
Yeah,
you
gotta get better.
Yeah.
Or at least better than the person you play with most. Chase Malcolm, you motherfucker. Owen, I wanted to ask you, this is probably maybe a shallow question, but how cool does it feel to have a fucking game on PlayStation 4?
It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, right? Dude, like that must feel so validating. Like you know, it's cool, say, you know, as an artist, say you do a webcomic or something, right? You're like, this is fun, I guess I'll take my own thing, blah, blah. But then if, like, DC or Marvel came after you,
and
like,
prints
we want
it.
we want to print your thing.
Like,
You'd feel validated. You know, you get
yeah.
this, like, sense of, like, oh, I'm doing something right, you know? Even if you could have, like, a million fans in a webcomic, and you're still like, am I garbage?
Oh yeah, like for me, my career is not ready, or like my big goal with my concept art side of my career is I have to be in a concept art book for the game, the art of into a game. Until it's in there, I haven't done my job.
Well, when that happens, you're still gonna feel like garbage. Because, like, even like with Adult Swim, like I love Adult Swim.
Yeah.
They're like they make my favorite shows. I still watch them compulsively.
Yeah.
And so like, let's publish your game. I was like, fuck, that's amazing. It's like my favorite media brand.
Yeah.
Because I love my brands. Wants to publish my game, so that was amazing. And then being on PlayStation, also amazing. But it's like, I still don't feel like, I'm good. I
don't think it'll ever be done. But it's like, you know, there's like that feather in your cap. Because like when we were back in school and we're sitting around and we're all dreaming about the jobs we were going to have one day, and we're talking about like that sense of accomplishment that we've achieved, that status of being like, yes, I'm a developer. Like, when do I finally feel like a developer? I still don't feel like a concept artist. I do contracts. I've worked with comic book artists. I've done all sorts of other work on the side, but like I still don't feel like I've reached that level to those out there that I feel like, you know, like you look at the for us in concept art, there's names that you can follow. I'm sure there are some in dev world as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But like I look at their careers and I want to achieve at least half of what that is. But I know that by a particular roundabout age, I've achieved that goal, right? And that's what like me getting my work into a book would be like, right? And for you, I'm sure getting yourself with a game that you're making as a indie dev, or well, you know, if you're an indie dev, for God's sake, you're an indie dev. Doing that, getting that out on a console in itself and having that whole release, right? It's got to feel like, you know, I've done it. I am a dev. I am really like,
But I mean, there's so much work that goes into shipping a game like that.
Yeah.
Not even just making the game, but like going through QA and making sure there's no bugs and making sure it's performing well on the console and on PC and everything. Like by the end, I'm like, yeah, no, I am a developer. I did all that shit. It's like the fact that it's on PlayStation is cool. It's like I did enough work that it's like I don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
Do you think like other industries have imposter syndrome as bad? Like I've been a graphic designer for like professionally for like 2.5 years now, almost 3, and like I'm still like, am I tricking this company? Like, you know what I mean?
I'm always an imposter, even for the concept art for anything. Like I'm always like, I'll be like referencing something, and it's whatever I've drawn like a fucking squab on this page, and on this page, whatever I was looking at just had a beak by chance, and I'll be like, they know I'm copying, but I didn't do anything close to it, and I feel like I'm such a fake for copying.
I'm plagiarizing.
Yeah,
I feel immensely guilty. Like,
but it's the same thing for design, because I've done graphic design, and my partner's a graphic designer, and every single time he makes a website, he's like, "Oh, it looks like something from Squarespace," and I'm like, "But that's because everyone likes that.
Yeah,
you're supposed to take those things. We're always going to be frauds.
Yeah,
Everyone is.
absolutely. Do you think like Robert De Niro is like sitting like in his park? He's just like, can I really act? You know?
I'm sure.
I think he's fine.
And then he turns on Meet the Parents 2 and he's like, shit. Do you have any final questions for Owen?
Let's see if I've got anything left.
Because I have one final one if you don't.
I have. Where did your magic powers come from?
Consummate professionals here at
This
the
is more
podcast.
basically as a joke. And it's one that I still make towards Owen until today. Was back in school. I don't even remember where it came from, but someone mentioned magic math in our math class.
Math magician?
Yeah. And then you said mathematician, and I was like, that is the greatest word anyone's ever come up with.
You can... Watson is currently... My dog is currently climbing Owen.
Yeah, you can kick
scaling
him
him like a King Kong and a Statue of Liberty or something. Watson, come here.
But yeah, so like, and then I drew a picture of Owen as a math magician throwing numbers out into the world. But then you started producing stuff that no one else understood how it came from, right? And still today, like in most of the circles around Ottawa, whenever it shows up, Owen's name gets dropped as like the guy who does the stuff that no one understands how it gets there, right? And it is actually, that's basically the final question, is that you do work that most people in this city don't do, right? Like then everyone's baffled on how you got there, right? And I guess as a question of where your powers come from is like, what made you choose to do the things that like no one else does? Like no one sits down and plays with shaders. No one.
Fuck off, Mike. How'd you turn "How are you magic" into a good question? Like I would have just been like, "Are you Gandalf?" Like, end of sentence.
Well, I think it sort of comes back to just make stuff constantly and put it out there.
Yeah.
And that was driven by quit your job and don't have a source of income. And so
light a fire under your ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I started making games like nonstop. Is because like Flash games, they made money, but it wasn't good money.
No.
It was like money for the month.
Yeah.
And then next month I'd have to make a new game, and I had to get it done quickly enough so I could sell it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's basically just like work nonstop until it hurts.
I was gonna ask, do you have any piece of advice for, say, some lone indie developer listening to our podcast? Is there any final words you'd like to give?
It's the same as what I just said. Just make stuff.
Make stuff.
Make stuff. Make stuff.
It's always the advice I give out to all my students. They're all like, "What is the secret?" And I'll give a second secret is networking. Like
yeah.
As much as you and I are both, and also Cal, we're introverts. We don't like meeting people. We don't like going out. We like we're game people. But go out to everything. I mean, you started, actually, as a nice little pitch out to them, you were one of the ones who started Dirty Rectangles, right?
Yeah, I was one of the early guys helping organize the monthly meetups.
Yeah. Which is a great meetup, and it's still running to today. It's awesome. They get together. It's still at...
It's at the Avant-Garde downtown in Ottawa, and actually this month I'm going to be doing a postmortem for Small Radios.
Oh, cool.
Okay,
So that is the third Wednesday, which is 2 Wednesdays from now?
Yep.
2 Wednesdays from now, which is...
Third Wednesday of January, whatever that is.
That would be January 18th.
18th. Yeah.
2017, if you're listening to this in the future.
Yeah, so if you're in Ottawa, go down and check that out. If you haven't been to a Dirty Rectangles and you're a dev, definitely go. It's a great community. I'm big behind that, obviously, since I run one myself. I wouldn't be against it. Or like sitting on the other side of the street, scowling, wagging my fist. And obviously go out this month and check out Owen's stuff.
Yeah. Owen Deery, thanks so much for being the first guest on the Pens and Pixels podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You've been a delight.
I'd love to come back. This is fun.
Absolutely,
Yeah, totally.
absolutely. You're welcome back anytime if you want to do some more newsy news with us and all our other shitty topics.
It's great. I learned so much.
Yeah, right? You know about James McAvoy's career now.
Yeah.
You might know who Ariana Grande is.
Next time.
I actually, strangely now, like, I never used to keep up with pop culture, and then I showed up for the first podcast, and Cal was just suddenly started, like, rhyming shit off, and he was, like, researching. So then I started going home and being like, I can't not fall behind.
So, thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to find Owen, he is on Twitter, at Owen Deery. You can find him, I guess everything's through Twitter. There's Tumblr, all the posts and whatnot. I am on Twitter, at TheCalG. Mike is at Mike Kent Draws. And Pens and Pixels is across all social medias. Pick your poison, Pens and Pixels, or Pens and Pixels.
Yeah, and if you're interested in Owen's game, it's, oh my god, I was about to flip it. What is it again?
Small radio,
big television. And it's on the PlayStation Store and on Steam. So make sure to check that out. It's a very great game, and just the fact to sit back and play something like that, you know, one man just churned his life out for 2 years, and his wife probably just going to, like, murder him.
She actually helped out as well. I didn't mention that.
Oh!
But yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so near the end of development, I needed some sort of environmental art, and she's a great 2D artist, so I sort of brought her aboard to help crunch out some assets for me, and she was a huge help. So, Katie Sheedy, amazing artist.
Yeah, amazing.
Awesome.
Just
that was a way better note to end on, a very sweet, kind note, rather than the one where you were going with this murder.
Well, I was going to feel like now she won't murder him because he gave her the proper pitch.
The lack of murder is a great place to end.
Lack of murder is a good place.
Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
The device can be useful for combating aberrant emotions. Contact with magnetic devices is forbidden. Extended use of the device is not advised. This tape will restart in 3, 2, 1. Small radios, big televisions. Available November 8th.